So much news going on right now, it's hard to keep up, but we think something really significant has just happened in the state of California. The Attorney General there, Javier Becerra, just sent a warning to employers in his state. He said this yesterday. He said, defy the federal government or you will face punishment. Federal immigration authorities reportedly are planning a crackdown in California, which has more illegal aliens than any other state. In response to that, Becerra held a press conference in which he threatened Californians with prosecution and heavy fines if they dare to collaborate with their government in any way to help enforce this country's borders. We want to repeat that and let it sink in for a second. The country's biggest state is punishing its citizens for following federal law. Well, that's not just craven politics. It's a threat to the basic integrity of the United States. How basic? Well, there's a famous Supreme Court decision called McCullough versus Maryland. In that case, the court held that because the federal government is supreme to the states, it is unconstitutional for the states to sabotage valid actions of the federal government. That case was decided in 1819. It's been settled law for almost 200 years. A lot of the things we take for granted rest on that case. It's easily one of the most important Supreme Court decisions in our history. If you ignore it, the U.S. immediately falls apart. That's not an overstatement. Think about it. If you followed Becerra's lead, and any state could simply nullify any federal law it didn't like, what would happen? And that means not just immigration laws, by the way. That means tax laws. That means interstate commerce, foreign trade, abortion, narcotics, human trafficking, guns, you name it. Think of a law. What would happen? Well, the country would immediately descend into ungovernable chaos. Keep in mind, and this would be relevant, every state also maintains its own heavily armed National Guard. Disaster. And it's not a theoretical disaster, by the way. It actually happened to us once. Liberals used to worry about things like this. You remember the media hyperventilating pretty recently because Nevada rancher Cliven Bundy tried to defy federal land use law out west. You saw them cheer as an obscure county clerk in Kentucky called Kim Davis went to jail for refusing to grant gay marriage licenses a couple of years ago. Those cases were nothing compared to this in scale or significance. The chief law enforcement officer of the country's largest state has essentially declared independence from the rest of America, and he's ordered his citizens to secede with him. We fought a civil war over this very question 150 years ago. Democrats lost, by the way. Keep in mind that California is challenging the integrity of the Union not in order to help its citizens, but on behalf of a foreign population that has no right to be here in the first place. We've had a lot of people on this program lately to talk about DACA and illegal immigration. Well, we've asked every one of them the same question, which is the only question that actually matters. How does any of this help American citizens? Every night we ask that question. So far, we've not yet received a single coherent answer, not one. Do you think that you have an obligation to represent American citizens first above people who are here illegally?
I represent my citizens very well, thank you, Tucker. Everyone that comes through that door.
Okay, so you weren't willing to answer that
loves the service.
So let's try a second one. How about in each specific case we say, if you're an immigrant here, really simple, prove that you're producing more than you consume. Would you be for applying that standard?
I'm for the American people. I'm for Republicans, Democrats coming together.
Oh, you're not for that standard. Every parent in America worries about the cost. Now, taxpayers in New Jersey will be subsidizing the cost for illegal aliens. Why does that help them? Why does that help citizens of New Jersey?
Didn't you say, as you said, you should throw them all out? I mean, could you really be suggesting that we're going to take 500,000 people in our state and deport them? Could you be suggesting that we take 11 million
because you don't have an answer. They don't have an answer because they don't care what the answer is, because helping Americans is not the point. Illegal immigration makes them feel like good people. It makes their donors much richer. And of course, and this is the core point, it ensures their reelection forever and ever. Now it's destroying the country we grew up in, but whatever. All they see is upside. Rebecca Kaplan is an Oakland City Councilwoman. She joins us tonight. Rebecca, thanks for coming on. So here you have the Attorney General of the state of California threatening to prosecute citizens for obeying federal law. Doesn't that sound like something that happens in Mexico, not the United States?
Well, I think your point about the importance of protecting our citizens and our community is really well taken. And the reason I introduced the resolution that the Oakland City Council passed to have our police not work on immigration raids is because we have problems of real crime in our community. And diverting our scarce police resources away from fighting violence, away from fighting serious crime in order to participate in immigration raids undermines the safety of the community.
But that is, I think we're talking past each other, though, with respect. So what the new news here is that your Attorney General, Javier Becerra, has said he will prosecute Californians, employers, who follow federal law. And I'm asking, whatever you think about immigration, illegal or otherwise, that's the beginning of chaos. Can you see that?
Well, depending on how it's used, it could be. However, we've heard some serious cases of employers hiring undocumented immigrants and then refusing to pay them and then threatening to call ICE if they complain about not getting paid.
But that's not what the Attorney General...
using ICE as a tool to break their law.
Well, that's one of the reasons, and I think that's a real concern, actually. We agree on that. That's one of the reasons I'm against illegal immigration, is because it exploits workers of all kinds. And that's kind of the point, and I'm sure that's why your donors are for it, because they benefit. But that's not what the Attorney General of your state said. He said, if you follow immigration law, federal immigration law, we will prosecute you. And I don't think you have to be crazy to imagine how other states might decide, well, okay, we're going to prosecute our citizens for following federal tax law or abortion law or interstate commerce statutes. Do you see why this could result pretty quickly in, like, I don't know, a civil war?
Well, I certainly respect your concern that that could be abused. What I'm saying is we haven't seen yet any cases brought. There could be cases where it is justified. What we passed in Oakland is not an obligation on private citizens or private companies. It's a direction to our own taxpayer-funded law enforcement.
Right, I get it.
We want them focused on protecting the safety of the public and not immigration.
A million times. And we could have it now, but this just seems much bigger to me, and it is your state, and he's a fellow Democrat, and he's someone with his eyes on the White House. He's nationally prominent. He's certainly well known. And it just seems like he stepped over a line where he's not really behaving as attorney generals typically do. He's declaring independence from the rest of the country. Doesn't that worry you?
Well, certainly I worry when law enforcement steps over the line, and that's why we in Oakland were so concerned when ICE agents came in, tore apart a family in West Oakland, sent a young man for deportation who was not accused of any crime, and caused great harm to our community.
Okay, but you may not like the way,
are afraid to come forward. It hurts everyone.
I agree to this extent. There are lots of federal laws that I don't like. I don't like to see them enforced because I don't like them. However, I don't challenge the legitimacy of the law, of federal law enforcement, of the Congress of the United States, because that would result in civil war and anarchy. And that's exactly what your Attorney General just did. And so I'm giving you an opportunity right now to say to him, don't do this. Don't secede from the rest of the United States, from the country, and do this. It's a crazy thing to do. Do you not agree?
Well, I think there's very much concern in our community about the overreach of ICE and their explicit targeting of sanctuary cities.
I'm being respectful. I think you're a smart person. And I think this is bigger than whether a family in Oakland was hassled by ICE. This has to do with the staying together of the 50 United States. Do you think it's okay if tomorrow the Attorney General of Idaho said, we're not respecting federal gun law, and we're going to allow people to buy fully automatic weapons? How about hand grenades? And maybe some of them will get into the state of California. How would you feel about that?
Oh, I'm very concerned about the flood of illegal guns into California.
Oh, come on. Don't be a robot.
It's
Give me a real answer. Come on.
Absolutely.
You're being like a liberal robot where it's like, whatever I say, you're giving me the bumper sticker. But be a human being with me. This seems like a line that he's crossed. I worry about law enforcement
overreach. Absolutely, I worry about law enforcement overreach.
How about Javier Becerra, your chief law enforcement official in the biggest state in the union, saying, I'm going to prosecute you for following American law? You don't think that's huge?
Well, I think that there could be a case that would be problematic, but I'm saying I haven't seen him do that. What I have
because
seen
it happened yesterday
is the head of ICE targeting people based on his prejudice. Hey, I have a question for you, Tucker.
No,
you
hold
believe
on.
in the Bible, right? You've talked about being a Christian.
Don't give me the Bible thing. I'm not
What?
here to talk about my religious beliefs. I'm here to talk about the integrity of the republic. I don't think I'm overstating it. I'm not given to hysteria, but this seems like a really big thing, and you're ignoring it, and I don't think you should. I think that's a big mistake. We're out of time, Rebecca, but I appreciate your coming on, even if you refuse to answer a single question. Thank you. The topic of chain migration, central to negotiations over a DACA deal, central to all negotiations over immigration, because a huge percentage of our immigrants come here because they have relatives here already. Jessica Vaughn has taken a very close look at those numbers. She's at the Center for Immigration Studies. She joins us tonight. Jessica, give us a sense of how key chain migration, it's a phrase the left is saying we're not allowed to use anymore, but it's the phrase. How central is that to our immigration patterns?
Well, it makes up more than half of all legal immigration today.
So most.
Right. It is. It's most of immigration, and it's the fastest growing part of immigration because certain categories of chain migration are not limited, like some of the family preferences. For example, the parents of U.S. citizens come in unlimited numbers with no waiting period. So there are more and more of them coming every year. And we've actually been able to trace the pattern of immigration from certain countries where it started off with, say, the lottery as being one of the main forms of immigration, and then over time, chain migration starts to dwarf any other kind of immigration. It's got a built-in momentum, and that's driving growth in our immigration system, and it's ensuring that the immigration flow that we get is basically the same kind of people who came before. We're letting yesterday's immigrants choose tomorrow's immigrants when it's based on chain migration. And that's not a logical way to run an immigration system.
It sounds like we're not in control of it. Well, that's it. I mean, it doesn't sound by your description that the U.S. government, its citizens, are really in charge of who comes here because of chain migration.
That's right. Immigrants are in charge of who comes through chain migration. And that's how we've seen, particularly when you have the lottery driving a lot of new chain migration. We have countries from all over the world that previously didn't send many immigrants. And eventually, chain migration exponentially increases the numbers, and it develops a life of its own in a way, and momentum of its own. And that's why this is one of the key things that needs to be addressed if there's going to be an immigration bill, because if we do a DACA amnesty, the people who get that amnesty, whether it's the 700,000 people who now have DACA or the 3 million some who are part of certain other plans that have been proposed, like by Senator Durbin, their parents will qualify under our current system. And that's, at least going to probably double the size of the amnesty.
That's unbelievable.
And that's why chain migration is one of the 4 things that President Trump says has to be a part of a deal to offset the effects of any amnesty.
So I guess the takeaway, just for our viewers, is chain migration is responsible for the majority of people who come here legally. So it's not some afterthought. It's the debate right there. Thank you for making that clear to us.